Welcome to Charts Today. My name's David Linton, and today's edition for Monday the 26th of October comes to you from London. And we start by looking just quickly at the energy mix. A lot of red on the screen, and we're seeing most of all that crude oil is down around 2.5%. So that's the big start to the week, that we are just seeing crude oil falling off, and that is having an impact. We'll come back and look at commodities and European energy in a minute, but that's just the first thing to notice. Looking more at the macro, we're looking at currencies, then stocks and some commodities. We see, first of all, that the dollar index is actually just recovering a little bit this morning. So over the last few days, we're actually seeing the dollar just ticking up, looking more and more like this was the low. Remembering this is my long-term weekly chart, my medium-term daily chart, and my short-term 60-minute chart. And if we're below the cloud, we're bearish; above, we're bullish, and then the corresponding point and figure targets. So we do have this recovery going on short-term, but we do still have downside targets hanging over. So still quite a mixed picture, but this is increasingly looking like a bottom that we saw in September. Looking at the euro, we're seeing here again that it's just falling away against that stronger dollar, so that's quite key. Sterling sitting at 130.24, and against the euro, that's against the dollar, of course. Against the euro, we're still holding on to the 110 level. A lot will depend on how Brexit discussions go. That's the thing influencing sterling at the moment. Taking a look at Bitcoin, we're above $13,000 for the first time in quite a long time. If we look at that weekly chart, we see here we haven't really been in this position for 2.5 years. So that's really significant for Bitcoin this morning. And we have had intra-week highs, of course, but the fact that we closed at a weekly high is quite key. And we're pushing higher, and just keep an eye out for new all-time highs, but lots of upside targets. Cryptocurrency followers will be getting quite excited. The S&P 500 index was up slightly on Friday, did have a down week though. We see that on the weekly candle, just struggling to break to new highs. Coronavirus and US election hanging over, and Nasdaq much the same. And we see here we are in short-term bearish territories with these downside targets some 23% lower hanging over us. The Dow was down very slightly on Friday, and the futures are down quite sharply today, just under 1%. So it does suggest we're going to get off to a poor start this week in the US, with the futures for the S&P down 0.87% and the Nasdaq E-mini down 0.86%. So much the same there, falling away. The VIX volatility nudging this critical 30 level. It's sitting at 29.89 this morning. It is in short-term bullish territory, which is bad news for stocks. Of course, this is the fear index. If this goes up, that implies that stocks are going to go down. It's the fear factor, and we do have upside targets here. So we are just seeing a steady rise here, and that is a worry. So just keep an eye out on that. In the UK, the FTSE future is flat this morning, but stocks themselves are down. We're seeing the DAX down over 2%, so that's falling quite heavily. Just starting to nudge 3-4 month lows here on the DAX, so testing that low that we saw in at the end of July is not looking good there. The CAC Quarante also lower, and that's also just looking a bit weak. Looking at Japan, we were down 0.4% there, and if we look at the Hang Seng, we're actually up. We bucked the trend here. This uptrend in the Hang Seng is holding on. Chinese stocks were down nearly 1% in Shanghai, just starting to show signs that we're weakening on this this consolidation pattern. So we just need to watch for new lows there below that July or August low as well. The Sensex in India was down quite sharply, down 1.65%. Virus fears weighing heavily there. And in Oz, the market was actually fairly resilient, just down slightly, holding on to its short-term bull trend, unlike many other markets, but of course still has lots of work to do to get back to bullish. Looking at gold, we're sitting at 18.99. So we're back below the $1,900 level. That's taken a short-term bearish. The long-term charts still look pretty good, but gold is just taking a pause for breath there, and the same with silver, falling into short-term bearish territory as well. US 10-year yield sitting at 0.81%. We did get into the high 80s on the last week, but we've fallen away quite sharply here now, but we are still holding the bullish trend. Does look very much like we've seen a bottom in US 10-year yields. Quick look at the energy mix now. Brent crude finding some support this morning at around $40.50, but the fact that we've just failed to make a new high, and this high that we saw back in September is hanging over us, and the sentiment change we're seeing in markets, it does look like crude could make new lows, and once that happens, we move to some pretty big downside targets. And if we look at actually on the daily chart on Brent crude, we see we've got target to $30, so that's some $10 fall. That's quite a big sort of move, some 25% lower if we make new lows. US nat gas nudging that $3 mark. It hit that for the first time last week, for the first time in 21 months that we got above $3 on US nat gas. It's looking much stronger. Capacity cuts there in the US helping the price harden. RBOB following crude oil, of course, and we're seeing gasoline prices just sinking lower. Again, the fact that we've failed to make new highs is hanging over the price. Of course, crude oil will dominate there. Coal is down 0.2% this morning, but stuck in a range. And if we look at emissions, of course, that was the big story last week, and we did fall away making new lows. We've activated this downside target. We're going back to the bottom. We've got these key ranges now, which are really quite key. Just the new K key on Updata gives you key levels, and we just see here it's a game between 23 and 2570. That's what we have to watch. And at the moment would favour the downside in that range. If we can break higher, that would activate upside targets, but for the moment it's not looking likely. NBP is a bright spot this morning, up 1.7%. We remain bullish on NBP, and in fact that we don't have a price yet for NBP, so it will probably open lower. We're seeing that already with TTF and seasonal gas also down, but the trends here very different from power and emissions, still looking very strong indeed. Gas pool also this morning we are just seeing a little bit of pullback down, nearly 2%. German power starting to weaken again. Whilst we're below this €40 mark, that is bad for the power market. And if we look at the quarterly contract, that's also lower. French power, we are seeing also lower there as well this morning. Dutch power is bucking the trend for the moment. Nordic power down 3%. Will we take out last week's low? That would be very bad if we did. It's just a shortage of downside targets. We would activate a big downside target if we do go lower. And we see the quarterly contract much the same. Czech power, lack of liquidity here. It's just a bit of a hard call. Keep an eye on your OTC targets. And looking at UK power, we're seeing here this is holding on, and actually we're just this is a bit of a bright spot of less liquidity here, of course. That's it for today. Until tomorrow, happy charting. See you then.